with the big bad in a campaign. Stories are a rising and falling tide, a sinusoidal curve, if you will, towards advancement. And generally speaking, it's a climbing sinusoidal curve. So at certain points, they have to confront the big bad, the villain of the story, the nemesis that you've placed in front of them. And this should be a stressful condition for them. They should have to think with all of their thinking bits, so to speak, and make decisions based on what the situation is very seriously so that they can overcome the bad. So when they do decide to take on the big bad, realize that the big bad has a problem. Generally speaking, when you're talking about a monstrous villain, a monstrous nemesis, then that monster generally is known to be a solo, somebody who operates alone. The concept of going into the dragon's lair to kill the dragon, there's generally one dragon. And if you look at it just surely from the number of actions available to the players versus the actions available to the dragon, unless it is a one-on-one warrior against a dragon, it's not going to be square. And even if it's 1v1, it's not necessarily square because now you have a action economy favor for the monster because monsters generally have 2 claw attacks and a bite at the very minimum. And with a dragon, you'd have several more possibilities. So you have to take into account the number of players, the number of actions per player, and the number of sidekicks and ancillary damage dealing that they can bring to bear. So therefore, the players have to look at it from the standpoint of, okay, we know the dragon can claw, he can bite, he can attack with his tail. More than likely, he can do a wing buffet of some sort, and maybe he has a special pounce attack or something. So there might be 6 attack forms, and if the dragon is going against an average group of players, you'll have a fighter who has 2 actions per turn. Generally, you'll have an archer that's got 2 arrows per turn, and then you've got a spellcaster who generally is doing more massive amounts of damage in each turn. So therefore, the leverage or the balance between them is fairly equitable when you're talking about lower level characters. However, once the characters start to advance, then a fighter might have 3 or more attacks. A rogue might have 1 or 2 special attacks. A spellcaster might have a ranged attack and an item effect. There are a lot of different ways that can cause an imbalance against the monster. So when the party begins to plan for taking on the big bad, you have to be fairly clear with them about what their possibilities are. In other words, what the monster might have on its side. So a dragon may have kobolds or goblins or some little minor being that'll act as damage sinks, so to speak, that'll be depleting or deflating the number of attacks that the players can bring to bear on the big bad. Maybe there are spell effects or lair effects that are going to mitigate or reduce the player's actions. In any way, you have to figure out and calculate what is the best balance between those to make the big bad fight even seem fair. Then finally, you have to determine whether or not the taking the big bad on is A, prudent, or B, necessary in the story. Because if it's necessary for the story for the heroes to defeat the big bad in this scene, then he's not the overall big bad because he is only a pawn to be expelled during the campaign. Because if you have the plan to be a huge dragon lair hunt at the end of a story, but you kill the dragon off earlier because of a meeting with the big bad, then you've got a challenge in your hands. So you have to think with the long eyes, so to speak. You have to be looking farther down the road than this particular encounter in order to rectify the balancing of the engagement with the big bad. And you also have to take into account at what point does the big bad punch the card? When does the big bad say, I've had enough and I'm getting out of here? And is there a possibility? If the players have certain skills based, it becomes almost impossible for the monster to evade. Unless, of course, using the Nikos RPG. But we're right now talking about general role playing, but the Nikos RPG has a mechanism specifically for the runaway mechanics. So if you are wanting to withdraw from a fight, there is a process you have to go through to succeed, but it is possible. It isn't overcome by simple skills checks. Like I can't remember, there are several where for example, a barbarian can immediately react to a monster that is leaving the area of combat and take an action to engage them. And I can't remember the details, but the point is that there are ways in character development where the characters can become blocks to the flow of the engagement if they can prevent the big bad from escaping. So you have to take that into account. And so with all of these different concepts of how taking on the big bad is a leverage thing, just realize that it is an exciting moment in the characters' lives, and it should be dangerous and it should be scary, but it also should be achievable